For the first time ever, DraftKings is launching brackets nationwide to everyone to participate in. That's right. Features include a $64,000 free entry option nationally and DraftKings' first cash bracket ever in New Jersey, up to $100,000 in cash prizes. DraftKings customers can also use the Sportsbook app to set up private pools for their free brackets to play with friends across the country. For more details on brackets and everything DraftKings will offer for March Madness, visit DraftKings March Madness Hub. And joining me now on the Boardwalk Kind of Hotline, Julian Edlow, as he always does talk about NBA. But today, Julian, we're talking the other basketball March Madness. How you doing today, my friend?
The day before March Madness, couldn't be doing much better.
You know, when you look initially at the tournament, you know, before we start talking about some of the specific options people have with DraftKings and some of the games that you like, you know, talk a little bit about, you know, your perspective. Are you the kind of guy who says, I have to find an upset here or there? Are you the kind of guy who just kind of waits for the matchups to line up and then you just go matchup by matchup? Like, you know, what is typically your strategy when looking at a bracket?
Yeah, I mean, you can't force anything, I think. So sometimes you come into this with teams that you decide you already like. Or, for example, Marquette was one of my favorite teams this season a few weeks ago, just in terms of covering spreads and winning games. And they come limping in, losing 5 of their last 6. The best player, Marcus Howard, has a wrist injury. And they go up against, you know, this hot Murray State team with the best player on the floor, a top 5 NBA pick in Ja Morant. So that's one of those spots where, you know, you can say this underdog seems to really have something going here. But, for example, Wofford has been a team that I really loved all season. They're such a good scoring team. They have very underrated players. They play at a great pace. I think they're underrated in so many ways. I was really looking forward to hopefully having them be one of my Sweet 16 teams, but just looking at their matchups, I don't know if they can beat Seton Hall in the first round. And if they do, it would be Kentucky in the next round. So Wofford's been a team I've loved so much, but the spot didn't work for them. Now I don't even know if I can have them winning a game in this tournament.
You know, you look at the options with the tournament each year, and I think there is a part of them that says, like you said with Wofford, they look for that team that they've seen, whether it's you with Wofford, whether it's some people, you know, I know people who, because, you know, the Washington Huskies played a game in our backyard here in Atlantic City, people are looking for Washington on the bracket. So, you know, for the people who are looking for the lower seeds, who are some of the lower seeds that if people are going to jump on the DraftKings.com, the DraftKings app, that you're saying you guys need to jump on these teams?
Yeah, so Murray is getting the hype, and I know this team doesn't really they're the same level as these other 12 seeds. Everybody's heard of Oregon. They're a good Pac-12 team that was ranked earlier in the season, but Oregon jumps out to me right away. They've been so hot. They won that Pac-12 tournament. They've won 8 games in a row. They've covered the spread in each of their last 6 games, so they're not your typical 12 seed. Obviously, the last 4 teams into the field all got 11 seeds and have those play games, and yet you have Oregon ranked below them in terms of seeding as 12. So Oregon's the 12 that I'm really in love with. I think Murray State is going to be a popular upset that everybody takes, but there are some good low-seeded teams in this bracket. You know, Liberty is a really good team. I know they have kind of a tough draw there, but in Mississippi State it was an SEC team, but they're a team I think that can advance. What Belmont showed us last night, Belmont is a team similar to Wofford, very underrated, very good offensive team. They beat Temple in that 11 matchup and now get a very average Maryland team. Maryland's a good rebounding team. They have size, but if Belmont's shooting well, there's no rebound to be had, and they can win that game. So I like those 2 teams on that side of the bracket. I mentioned Oregon, the team that they might wind up, we might have one of those 12-13 games because UC Irvine playing a 4-seed Kansas State without their best player, Dean Wade. UC Irvine is a tremendous team, one of the best defensive teams in the nation. They hold opponents to the lowest 2-point percentage in the nation. So if you're a 3-point shooting team, UC Irvine can really force you to miss. Those, I think, are the teams that stand out to me the most. I know New Mexico State is a really hot pick, a 30-4 team over Auburn. I happen to like the way Auburn's playing, so that one didn't jump out to me the way that everybody else seems to like that game. But there's, as always, some very talented low seeds.
I know a lot of people have also been focused on how there's 3 1 seeds from the same conference. Does that bother you at all? Like, do you look at that and say, man, that's a little fishy, or do you just kind of shrug your shoulders and you're like, well, you know what, the best teams will make it to the Final Four anyway, so it doesn't matter who is number 1 seed?
No, I thought all 3 of those ACC teams deserved the number 1 seeds. UVA's losses, they have 2 losses to Duke. You can't knock them for that. Duke, a couple of losses to Carolina, and then they beat them by 1 in the ACC tournament. You can't knock them for that. And Carolina, although they got off to a sluggish start, really redeemed themselves late. They were a fantastic team down the stretch. So I thought they all deserved it. And as far as the conference goes, I don't really care what conference they're in. If one of those SEC teams deserves to be there, guess what? Tennessee is a 2 seed in the bracket that UVA is in. Kentucky is a 2 seed in the bracket that UNC is in. So if those were the better teams, and Michigan State, the other team that had a gripe for a number 1 seed, they're in the bracket that Duke is a number 1 seed in. So if any of those teams deserved to be number 1 seed, they're going to have the chance to prove it.
Julian Edlow joining us on the Worldwide Kind of Hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Follow him on Twitter at Julian Edlow for all of your NBA and college basketball tips as we got the DraftKings opportunities this weekend. So let's touch on these DraftKings opportunities for the folks. Everyone's got a place where they can submit a bracket. So why should they jump on the DraftKings opportunity to submit their bracket there?
Well, for starters, you can win money for free, and that's usually a pretty cool thing to do. We've got that $64,000 pool. And then this is the perfect place to plug the New Jersey option, which is a cash bracket and allows you to actually put cash in to submit your bracket and win even more. So it's awesome bracket challenges. And then we have a ton of sportsbook content, which obviously pertains to New Jersey. I know that we're filming a video picking against the spread for every game of this entire tournament. Up on the DraftKings playbook, I have an article up with some futures bets that I like for the tournament. My article for my favorite bets for Thursday's slate I know is already out on the playbook, and then my best bets for Friday will probably come out sometime around when the tournament tips off on Thursday. So we have a lot of sportsbook content on there, as well as some content to promote and help you out with the bracket challenges.
And, of course, again, that's at Julian Edlow on Twitter. Couple more of the matchups I think that are very interesting. First of all, we can't overlook the Minnesota-Louisville matchup. I mean, I don't care what the committee says. The committee was looking around and saying, ooh, we can put Pitino's son versus Louisville. And you and I both know the first thing Pitino's son is doing is calling Dad in Greece, getting a scouting report. I mean, talk about a match made for television.
Of course, the tournament committee tells us how everything is completely randomly done.
Always.
Put them in the closest bracket to their geographics and whatever. And then, oh, look what the first game on the first day of the tournament at noon is. It's Pitino versus Louisville.
Right.
So obviously this was done on purpose. And, hey, I'm here for it. Let's get pumped up and watch a really good first game. I happen to think, the way things ended at Louisville, Rick Pitino is going to be rooting for his son in Minnesota in this game and do everything he can to help him win this game. So Minnesota, I think, that number's moved around 5.5, but Minnesota is catching 5 or 5.5 points. I think the way that Louisville kind of limped in the ACC and limped into the tournament, they only beat teams ranked them in ACC play. Otherwise, they were just beating up on the bottom feeders there. I love the ACC, but they also have some bad, Wake Forest, Miami teams at the bottom that Louisville collected a lot of their wins against. And Minnesota coming off a pair of wins against Purdue, who has a 3 seed in this tournament. So I think it's a really great spot for Minnesota.
Some teams that don't have the top 4 seeds but are very good basketball teams, a team like Nevada with the 7 seed in their bracket, a team like Auburn with a 5 seed in their bracket. These are 2 very good teams that have a really tough draw, and if they're going to make a deep run, they got to beat some really good teams along the way. Do you think that teams like Nevada and Auburn, do you think they can make a deep run, or do you think they're going to trip over somebody early before they can even get to the Sweet 16 or Elite 8?
So in Auburn's case, I think we're going to learn a lot about them early. They're traveling, I believe that game's in Utah, and they're playing New Mexico State, who's right there, doesn't have much of a commute to get to that game. And
Correct.
New Mexico State is 30-4, but they haven't really gotten a win that's caught my eye, and when they've played quality opponents, it hasn't gone that well for them. So Auburn, I understand there might be a letdown here after winning that SEC tournament, everything they did to do that, but they're so much more talented. This was a top 10 team earlier in the AP rankings. Don't forget that. So they're a 5 seed, but they've been, I think, as high as 6, 7 in the nation this season. So I actually think while New Mexico State's a popular upset pick, I think Auburn can get through there. And then if they won that game, they would play the Kansas Northeastern winner. Northeastern's also a popular upset pick. And then Kansas has been so bad every time they're away from home, whether it's neutral court or a road game. So I don't trust Kansas much. I think Auburn's path to the Sweet 16 is definitely obtainable. In Nevada's case, I couldn't do more of a 180. I was very high on Nevada coming into this season. They have such a veteran-led team. They went to the Elite Eight, I think it was last season, where they lost to Loyola of Chicago. And, you bring those seniors back and expect that they're just going to be more motivated and better and be a much better team. But while their record is fantastic, they've lost some games to teams that aren't very good. They don't have any big win. If they beat Florida in the first round, their best win previously was Arizona State, who's playing tonight in an 11-seed play-in game. So Florida would be their best win of the season. They would get their best win of the season in the first round if they can win this game. I love Florida in this game. They are hot in the SEC. They lost Auburn by 3 in the SEC tournament. They defeated the 1-seeded LSU Tigers in that tournament. And they've played a ton of ranked competition. So I really like the Gators in this game. I had a lot, of high hopes for this Nevada team, and they just haven't done anything to prove to me that they can beat good competition.
Julian, outside of the main 1 seeds, the Duke, North Carolina, Virginia, and Gonzaga, what are the teams that are in like the 2 or 3 seed, 4 seed range that you think have the best chance of winning the national title or at least getting to the Final Four?
Yes, I think Kentucky, just because they're not on Duke's side of the bracket as a 2 seed, I like them a lot. UNC is going to be a heck of a game, but that's a game that they won earlier this season. So we know that they have the upside to win that game. They would have to likely get through Houston as well, who's a very good team. But Tennessee has, a tough path. They might have to play Cincinnati in Ohio in the second round. It basically comes down to the West to me, that bottom right, or bottom left rather, because Michigan State has a chance to beat Duke. I think they're that good. I think Duke probably got the toughest 2 seed out in the tournament, which is kind of strange. But Gonzaga's coming off that loss to St. Mary's. I think they'll, blow doors in their 116 game, but are they going to be good enough to go deep in this tournament? They are, but they're going to have to prove it against some pretty good teams. FSU is a really good ACC team, talented. They have size. They're athletic. That's probably going to be a Sweet 16 game, and then they're probably going to have to play a team like Texas Tech or Michigan to get there. So I think that West region is a place where maybe we could see a 2, 3, or 4 seed slip in there to the Final Four.
It's funny you said that. You said that Duke got the toughest 2 seed, whereas I heard a lot on Sunday from all the college basketball analysts. Well, Michigan State got the toughest 1 seed. So it seems like well, right. But I'm saying is you're taking it from the perspective of, look, Michigan State is really good, and that's you're looking at it more like it's a worse draw for Duke than it is for Michigan State, or am I reading that wrong?
I guess I think it's an equally bad draw for both, because if it was Tennessee, I guess I would say that wouldn't be as bad of a draw for Duke. But if Michigan State got UNC, is it going to be that much different than the matchup with Duke? I'm not sure. So I just think this is probably the top 1 and the top 2 seed, and they both just kind of got a bad draw here. But in the end, how much better is Michigan State than a Kentucky, than a Tennessee? It's probably not that much, but I do think that these two teams got a little bit of a tough draw, likely having to face each other in the Elite Eight if it holds.
And finally, if you had to, put on your genie hat and your crystal ball, is it going to be Duke, North Carolina in your eyes, or do you see somebody else in that national championship game?
You know what? I'm not done my bracket, but I'm starting to lean in UVA's direction. Virginia has been so good. They have so much to redeem themselves for last season, and they're coming off a double-digit loss to FSU in the ACC tournament. I just think they have a lot to prove, and they're the most balanced team in the country. They have the number 5 or 4 defensive efficiency adjusted, but they're even better on offense, and they don't get credit for that because they're such low-scoring games because they grind games down. They just get less offensive possessions. But in terms of efficiency, they are one of the best offensive teams in the country. I think that I really like UVA's path to the final. They're going to have a really tough time in the Final Four against UNC or Kentucky if one of those teams gets there. But I like UVA in that game, and then we'll see if they wind up with a third crack at Duke, a team that they've lost to twice this season. That would be a really hard game, but I'm thinking about having UVA in the middle of my bracket as the champion here.
All right, well, he's Julian Edlow. Follow him on Twitter for all your tips for DraftKings college basketball and NBA at Julian Edlow on Twitter. Again, let's remind folks, $64,000 free entry bracket nationally with DraftKings. And for those of us in New Jersey, the first cash bracket ever brought to you by DraftKings, up to $100,000 in cash prizes. Julian, appreciate your time here on a Wednesday. It's going to be a lot of fun these next few days. It's arguably the best time of year for all of us sports fans. I know a lot of us will be jumping on the apps and on the website, and of course we'll be following you for tips as well.
All right, thanks for having me on, Josh.